Hello lovely sewing friends, I hope you guys are doing well. Now, as these videos are really just a way for me to just upload stuff and talk about sewing once a week to you guys, I thought it would be fun for you guys to see my sewing studio because I am very lucky that I have a sewing studio in my current apartment, but that is because I kind of sacrificed having like a dining room area. I do have a little couch over there that I sit on most of the time, but I want to take you guys around my sewing studio. So I have my sewing studio always set up because that makes it very easy for me to just kind of like dip in and out of sewing projects as and when I want. But before I get to that, I want to show you guys my cross stitch that I've been working on. Look. So these here are going to be little flowers. They're going to be so lovely. So I've been working on this one for about 2 or 3 months, I would say, on and off, obviously. I like to, just had my lunch. I like to work on this when I am watching movies at the end of the night, or instead of being on my phone all the time out in public. So whenever I'm waiting for something or got appointments and had to sit in the waiting room for a while, bring my embroidery with me. So if you are wanting to maybe one of your New Year's resolutions this year is to not scroll on your phone so much, really good idea. Maybe try some cross stitch. But I'm just giving you guys a little update on that. But I'm actually going to show you guys my sewing studio. So we're going to be moving around a bit. So if you get motion sickness, you have been warned. So first of all, when I've had four different sewing studios in my sewing life. And what I learned from one to the other is certain things I just need these couple of things and I can work around it. I do love having lots of storage, but also sometimes having too much storage is not good because then everything is all put away all the time, and you don't access things as much. So that being said, another thing is having a standing desk. So I'll show you here. If I just put you on my, on my desk over there, you'll see I am standing and I have a surface to work from. Now, with this desk behind the standing desk, the kind of studio table-esque kind of thing, I actually built this. And the way I did this is just from stuff from IKEA and whatnot. So these are bookshelves, right? Which also allow for me to have lots of storage under here, but it is on display, which I'm not a fan of. But it was legit one of the things I just had to get sorted for my sewing studio, because without that I can't. First of all, it's a great surface area, but also I don't like working on a kitchen table or my kitchen island, because it just doesn't feel like I'm in my sewing space. So as soon as this was up, I was perfectly, I'm fine. Then this here, so for the top, right, this is very important, right? So this height is 113 centimeters, which is my exact kind of mid-waist height, so that it's easy for me to lean over and everything. But then I got a trestle table here and laid it out flat, and that creates the support for the top piece of wood here. So the top piece of wood here is actually MDF, right? And the reason why I use that type of wood is, number one, it's cheap. I think this was $17 or something for this massive piece of wood. Another thing, I can also draw on it. So I have all of these lines here. Here. So I have these lines here that mark my most frequently used measurements. So if I'm folding 150 width in half, I know that, when I align the salvages up with this point, it's perfectly in half. So I can draw on it, which is very good. Also, I use a rotary cutter every now and again. And the thing with MDF is that it is self-healing, because MDF is made up of lots of little wood fibers and everything. So as you cut, they kind of self-heal, obviously to a point, and then it starts to look a bit like used. So here you'll see, you can see kind of how there's lots of gashes in my table, and that's because I obviously stand here the most and use my rotary cutter here the most. But because you can see how big this table is, so yes, I use this quarter of this table most frequently. I could flip it the other way, then flip it upside down. So I have like 8 different uses out of one piece of wood, because I can just kind of rotate these wood pieces around, and it's really handy. So I think the whole setup for this was like, I'd say about $200. And what I love most about it is that it can be like packed down. So I can pack down the bookshelves at each end. I can, if I needed to move, I can move it. There are some cutting tables that are like custom made to order, and they're huge. And it's like, well, that's like 25 grand. And it has to be constructed in the space. So you've got a very big range of cost and size and usability, but like I've been using this in every single one of my sewing studios, and it's just worked the best. Like, why would you, unless you're a professional, you don't need anything more. Like standing desk, if that's what you want, or just a sitting desk. And again, I got my sewing desk, which is that one there. I got that off Facebook Marketplace when I first moved to Melbourne, and it was like $75. So that's another thing. Like whenever I move into a sewing studio, I never buy things brand new unless I need to, like these bookshelves. So another thing I always have is a heavy duty rack, because I not only hang things off it, I also hang a lot of my patterns, which are down here. So these are all my sewing patterns, and then I've got like those ones there, the like beigey cardboardy ones. So they are actually master copies. So basically, as a pattern designer, you have a master copy. So it's basically like the base pattern, and then you trace off that base pattern, and then you can do all your designy stuff. But I still have those from uni, and I actually don't use them as much as I probably should to justify keeping them. So I think next time I move apartments, I'm not going to take them with me, because I can redo them, like draft them up again. But right now I have no real need for them. But also another good thing about having a rack like this, I hang, this is my rubbish. So it's got like, those bits and bobs and stuff that just needs to go in the bin, but my main bin in this apartment is like in the kitchen. So I just have that up there, and I can just chuck rubbish in there. And then another bag I have is this one here. Now this is all my fabric scraps for stuffing things with. So mainly wales. Then the benefit of also having this type of rack is I hang up a lot of like the fabric I want to use, or like sewing projects, and things that need to be in this space for me to actually use them. Oh my gosh. And of course, things just fall off all the time. Anyway, another thing I also have in this space is my immediate like fabric storage here. So I have these big container bin things that I use to store a lot of my fabric. I'll swing you guys around here. I told you guys we've been moving a lot. So I have these fabric storage bins. Now, I just use them for organization mostly. I do also keep quite a bit of my fabric in like these, again, I'll show you. I keep a lot of my fabric in these kind of like vacuum seal bags. So I've got that one there just because I need to put it away. But if I'm working on a bunch of sewing things and like got projects and I'm playing, I'll put fabric that I want to immediately grab straight away in there, so that it's not like all vacuum packed up in those bags. So another thing I like to have in my sewing studio, what else? obviously a sewing machine, and an ironing board. Okay, so my ironing board, which is over here, as interesting as an ironing board and iron and sewing machine can be. Obviously, as you can probably tell, my ironing board gets used as like just space so I can have a clear desk whenever I need to work on my laptop. So I chuck everything up here, and so sometimes it just ends up being a bit of a mess. If I were to go to another place, I do not think I would get an ironing board, because I've been using one of these ironing mats, right? And the mini iron. Let me see if I can find it on short notice. And mini iron. So going from that to this, so much more useful and better saving at space and everything. Because now the one drawback on that is, oh, but you need to iron your clothes, and it's just like, hey, have you met me? I do not iron my clothes. Also, I do not really buy or make any clothes that need ironing. So first of all, that's that. And if on the odd occasion I do need to iron my clothes, I will just make do with a smaller surface area for the sake of it. Another thing is, yes, but you may need to iron big pieces of fabric before you cut into it. And it's like, yes, same thing. I'll just take the time. Like, so that's that. What else? I tend to actually have quite a few plants in my sewing space. So you can see I've got, oh my gosh, I've got one. We're gonna go round. So yeah, I have this one here that's kind of growing up, and then I have that one. Hopefully you can see that one going up there. And then I'll also show you my mood board. So I actually have, like, I'll show you at a distance as well. I have this big mood board here, and what that represents is just all the things that inspire me, not necessarily only sewing, but in design and general, like, things that I think look pretty, you know? I just spilled water on my other embroidery. See, this is why I don't have open containers in my sewing space. Another thing about MDF is that it absorbs water. So you kind of got to be a bit... Look at me. Excuse me. We're just going to go into the kitchen and get a tea towel to clean that up, because otherwise it's just going to be everywhere. In other news, I'm making shortbread today. It's my friend's birthday, so I thought I'd make her some shortbread. But yeah, I like to have quite a few different plants in my space, because then it also makes it nice and organic and like nice. One thing about my sewing space is that it is not clean and it is not tidy. And I'll tell you why it doesn't need to be. Shall I tell you why? Because this is my space and I like where things are and how it is. And yes, there could be better ways to organize things, but creativity is not organized, right? So like sometimes my sewing, oh my God, I obviously spills a lot more water than I originally thought, like soaking. Yeah, my sewing space does not need to be organized. I have a very clean and orderly apartment house kind of thing. And my sewing studio doesn't have to be. I like picking up and putting things down when and where I want. I'm just gonna actually just chuck that straight outside. So no matter how big or small your sewing space is, it's your sewing space. It doesn't have to be clean or tidy. Same way that like when someone says, oh, my seams are wonky, like I'm a beginner, my seams are wonky, how should I fix it? And I'm like, as a beginner, they're supposed to be wonky. Like it's just time and practice. And like other sewing studios that I've had were definitely better organized because they had different shapes and like, you know, I had different like areas to put things. But all in all, I kind of like it when things are on display. I think it kind of shows like the movement of a studio. It doesn't all have to be in one kind of like permanent state of, you know, this is how it's supposed to be. No, like I constantly change things around. Like I'll keep my fabric stash in a cupboard for a little bit and then I'll bring it out here because I want to sew more. And then like I've got underneath here, I'll show you a bunch of things under here, right? So I've got, let's go under the table. I've got like, you know, that's not really organized or aesthetical, if anything, she says, whilst under a table. But yeah, look at this. This is my bias binding box. It's just full of stuff. And what else do I have under here? I have a bunch of DVDs, an old laptop, some sewing books, some embroidery I haven't finished yet. But yeah, that's really my sewing studio. So my advice, I guess, is if you have a sewing studio, live in it, as in like work in it. Like you will find the best way to use that space. There is no, this is the biggest mistake I think any interior design or interior person can make. They try to design the space as in like you go into it and saying, I want it to look like this. And it's like, yeah, that's great. But you know, your fabric looks nice here, but practicality wise, you're always reaching for it over here. For example, I have my ironing board right next to my sewing space, right? So that as I'm sewing, I can be like, and then I just pivot over and iron, and then back here, you know, like that is perfect for me. Whereas aesthetically, it could look better on the other side of the room or tucked away or whatever. And it's like, no, but like that doesn't, I'm just gonna move you over this way. If I try to design my studio space prior to coming in it and living in it and working in it, it would look completely different. But the way that it is now and how it has organically evolved, it's the best thing. Because there's actually like, there's a reason to why things are where they are. For example, my overlocker lives just at the side of my desk. Here, I'll show you. Hello, just lives down there. Yes, it could, in fact, live in this cupboard. See, even though I said I wanted more storage, I have storage here. But I'll tell you what fits in there? Absolutely nothing. My overlocker is like 2 centimeters too wide for it. So it's like, you can put things in there, but like they're not gonna get used. And having things close by and making it easy to sew is really important in a sewing studio, because if it isn't enjoyable, you're not going to spend time in there. Speaking of recovered memory. So when I was in going into my final year of uni, I knew from previous years of seeing 4th year students, I was going to be in that sewing studio for an ungodly amount of hours every day. So I had to make sure that the sewing studio, the space, the environment that I was going to spend so much time in had to be enjoyable. I could not, like, the sewing studio was fluorescent tube lighting, linoleum floors, really white, you know, walls and everything. And I was like, oh, like, it's very stark. And it wasn't enjoyable. I could see how it would not be enjoyable to be in. So what I did during my school holidays is I went into university and I actually decorated my little corner sewing studio. And I swear to God, that is the thing that made the difference, right? That is the thing that made all the difference, because I'll tell you about this. So I went in and I put some really cool green textured wallpaper up. It was like a sagey green, kind of like very kind of retro, but it was one that we had from home and I really liked it. So I put that up. Actually, I'll tell you a funny thing, right? So when I was at uni, we had like textbooks that were required, and I actually used an old piece of that wallpaper to cover my textbooks. So I actually have a sample of that wallpaper I put up. It was this. So it's like this green textured, it's gorgeous. I loved it. Like, So I wallpapered. I then put up floating shelves. I then put up my Alexander McQueen poster, because I like Alexander McQueen as a person was the reason I got into fashion design. I got some old wooden floorboard linoleum, kind of like, you know, the type that they use in renovations, and it's like, you know, anyway, I got some flooring in, and I just did enough for my little studio. What else did I do? I also like covered up, I put mirrors in my sewing studio so it made it look bigger. I put proper lighting in my sewing studio, so I had like light around near my sewing machine. It was gorgeous, and it made me want to go into uni. It made me want to do my work, because then I would be in that space. I also had lots of plants around as well. So it was something that was so essential for getting me to sew. And as a result, and various other time management things, I actually finished my degree 3 weeks early, because a lot of people, also this was another thing, so many people initially wanted all of the sewing studio spaces that were right next to the window, because we had this big kind of like studio-esque kind of room. It was a big room with all of us in it. Everyone wanted the desks and the sewing machines and the studios right next to these massive windows. Come winter, they all got sick, because it wasn't insulated. It was freezing cold, and they would never come to class. I say never, this was 5 years ago. I could be wrong. They were never there because it was cold. And why would you want to go into the studio for like 10, 15 hours a day and you're cold? I remember we used to bring hot water bottles into uni. It was that cold. So having a space that you love being in makes all the difference, right? I come and sit in my sewing studio, this area, nearly every day, either to have my breakfast or to do some sewing or to do some work. You know, it's always set up so that I can just go straight into it. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits about having a sewing studio at home. If you are someone who doesn't have a set up sewing studio like this, I do understand that not everyone has this. There are a couple of things that I would always recommend. I had a toolbox, not like a metal toolbox, but like, you know, a plastic toolbox that had all my tools and my sewing things in, like a dedicated container that I would put all my sewing stuff in, so that when I was ready to sew, it was all there. Make it as easy to sew than not. So for example, don't have your sewing machine at the back of the cupboard, up the loft and down the hallway. You know, you're never going to use it then. But if you keep it in a kitchen cupboard, that if you've got an extra hour in a weekend, you can pull it out and you can do some sewing. So yeah, it's so funny, I just thought about my sewing studio. I remember I used to have a snack box as well. It was a big snack box. It was huge. It was probably like this big. It was huge. I made sure that when I was at uni, I was like, right, it's going to be a year of just long nights, hard work. It's just how it is. And also what I managed to do is distribute the workload pretty well. So I also printed out a calendar of all of the due dates, and I put them in a calendar, and so I knew exactly when everything was due before we even got the assignment. Another thing I also did was I know this is turning into a uni video, but I can do a uni video. But also, we used to have free parking around our uni until our 4th year, And then in our 4th year, it turned to 2-hour parking, and they were religious about giving out parking tickets, which is annoying because we were all students. But anyway, what I did was I hired a car park of a resident, and I said, hey, can I please use your car park 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, $5 a week. And what that allowed me to do was, first of all, it was a guaranteed car park. So I was never having to find a car park and, walk, into uni. Another thing was safety wise, the place that I hired it off, the guy only lived like, I would say about 150 meters away from my uni. So it was like super safe. And then also at 5 o'clock, I had to go move my car. So it managed to get me out of the studio and get some fresh air. So that was great. A lot of other people, what ended up happening was they would go and park in a 2-hour car park, come into uni, and then whenever they had to go move their car, it was never a 5 or 10 minute thing. It never was. It was, oh, I need to go move my car. I'll go and get a coffee while I'm at it. I need to go move my car. Oh, I might as well go and, go to this fabric shop. A lot of people made an excuse for moving their car. So what this eventually compounded to people getting so behind with their collections, with their sewing, with their essays and everything, that I saw everyone else panic, and I'm just like, not my circus, not my monkeys. And that time efficiency, time management, and spatial management of knowing what I needed and where to find it and how to get it made my last year of uni not easy, but a lot more manageable than my peers. So I love a sewing studio. Goodbye.